At dawn, Sergeant Dana Holt pushed through the glass doors of Annex 4 at Camp Aldridge. She moved like water through steel, unbending, unapologetic. Her arrival went unnoticed, mostly. 3 National Guard reservists lingered near the weight rack, laughing too loud, standing too wide. "Probably does data entry drills," one of them muttered. $10 says she's here for yoga," said another, not bothering to lower his voice. Holt didn't glance their way. She just removed her jacket, revealing forearms corded with quiet strength. Then, as she adjusted her wrist wrap, 9 narrow burn marks slid into view, etched like tally marks into her skin, each one perfectly spaced, unadorned, and unmistakably deliberate. The room's rhythm shifted. Weight clinks slowed. Footsteps paused. The kind of silence that doesn't come from awe, but recognition. Or maybe guilt. She moved to the corner, laid her gym bag down, and began her warm-up. No earbuds. No headphones. She didn't need music to train. Movement was memory enough. Behind her, the 3 weekend warriors kept watching. Specialist Reed elbowed the taller one, Spence. "Watch this," he said. "Admin type, for sure. Bet she salutes in emails." Spence smirked. "She even wrapping her wrists right?" Still, she didn't respond. Holt just rotated her shoulders once, set her jaw, and stepped onto the mat. They followed. Their laughter hadn't died, only quieted, thinner now, but laced with something else. Something like nerves. "I mean, she probably thinks she's Rambo," Spence said, stretching theatrically. "Bet she's got a desktop wallpaper that says Born to File." Cowan chuckled, moving to the opposite edge of the mat. But Dana Holt didn't blink. Didn't speak. Her silence did what no rank ever could. It dared them to measure themselves by more than bravado. "Light sparring?" Spence said, nodding like it was a favor. Holt only nodded once. The signal was enough. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a dismantling. Spence came in with high knees and showy footwork, more speed than control. Holt stepped once. Angled left. His momentum carried him into empty air. Then into the mat. Hard. He blinked up from the floor, breath knocked from his chest. "Lucky shot," he muttered. They went again. He charged, tighter this time, faster. Holt let him come. At the last moment, she pivoted. Arm hooked. Shoulder dropped. His chest hit the mat with a hollow thud. This time she held the pin. His arm immobilized. Face pressed to vinyl. Still no words. When she rose, Spence stayed down. And that's when she pulled back her sleeve, just enough. The full pattern of burns was exposed now. 9 vertical lines. One of them broader. Newer. The gym went quiet again. Spence coughed. Chuckled weakly. "That's fake," he said, voice louder than it needed to be. "Definitely fake." No one corrected him. No one stood. Holt packed her bag. Tied the strap with care. Then turned and walked, each step echoing in the quiet she left behind. The injustice hung in the air, thicker than sweat. The sky outside Annex 4 had turned a pale, indifferent gray by the time Holt stepped through the rear door and crossed the lot behind the training complex. The air smelled faintly of motor oil and pine, an odd pairing, but familiar. She didn't look back. She never did. Behind her, the laughter had vanished, replaced by the sullen quiet that always followed embarrassment not yet metabolized. Spence sat on the bench rubbing his shoulder. Cowan and Reed hovered nearby, trying to act casual, but failing. They were waiting, though for what, none of them knew. Then came the sound of boots. Polished, deliberate. The front doors of Annex 4 parted and a familiar silhouette entered, Colonel Nathaniel Grant. Clipboard under one arm, coffee in the other, his eyes already sweeping the room with that trained stillness of a man who'd seen every kind of pride, every kind of shame. He didn't look angry. Just precise. He paused, squinting toward the mat, then to the sparring board. His finger traced down the list. "Holt," he said aloud. Spence flinched. Holt was already at the exit, her hand on the handle, but she paused, just enough. "Sir," she answered, voice low but clear. Grant stepped across the gym floor, slow and intentional. He stopped near where Spence had fallen. His eyes scanned the vinyl, then rose to her sleeve. His voice dropped. "You kept them," he said. She nodded once. After each one they wiped. He studied her for a long moment. Then his expression shifted, not to surprise, but something deeper. Familiarity. That last one, was that Vargas? She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Grant nodded, just once, eyes unreadable. The room had quieted to a hush. He turned, addressing the three reservists who now stood like children caught doing something wrong, but not yet scolded. "You all laughed," he said, his voice low, steady. "At marks you didn't recognize. At a body that carries more weight than your entire unit combined." No one moved. Grant continued, now louder. "You think those scars are for show?" He pointed. 9 burns. Each one made with heat because tattoos wouldn't hold where she operated. Sand tore skin like paper. She chose those burns. Not once. Not under orders. A choice. Each time, after completing missions others walked away from. He looked back at Holt. She didn't do it for medals. She did it to remember. Then he pointed to the broader mark. "That one? That's not hers. That's for someone else. For Vargas. A medic who didn't come back. Who saved everyone but himself. She made that mark alone. Because no one else could." Silence. A long, perfect silence. No excuses. No explanations. Spence swallowed hard. She chose to. She chose to finish what others wouldn't, Grant cut in. That's what she did. Again and again. He let the word sit, heavy and unavoidable. Then turned. And walked away. No more needed saying. Outside, the wind had picked up. Holt adjusted the strap on her bag and moved across the parking lot toward her car. Her boots, though civilian, still bore the memory of terrain no map could chart. The heel scuffed, the laces mismatched. But they were hers. She passed 2 airmen walking toward the mess, one of them younger than her last trainee. They glanced up, then away. Not out of dismissal, but out of something else. Recognition. Maybe even shame. She reached her car, unlocked it, then paused, eyes drifting across the hood. There, faint but clear, lay a folded piece of paper tucked under her wiper. She took it carefully. The handwriting was rushed, the ink smeared in places. "Ma'am. I didn't know. We didn't know. I'm sorry. No name." She tucked it into her jacket pocket. It didn't change anything. But still, it mattered. That afternoon, word spread across Camp Aldridge. Not through official memos, not through briefings. Just in the way reputations travel, in glances, in silences, in second thoughts. At the chow hall, Spence kept to himself. Cowan stared at his tray longer than he ate. Reed made quiet conversation with the mess attendant, but even that carried a brittle edge. By evening, the training roster had been updated. A new instructor was listed for the advanced hand-to-hand course. Name, D. Holt. No rank. Just the name. And next to it, an asterisk. Below, the footnote read, by appointment of Colonel N. Grant. No further explanation. It didn't need one. Later that week, during a briefing in one of the side classrooms, Spence showed up early. Sat near the back. Hands folded. Holt entered last. She didn't announce herself. Didn't look at anyone in particular. She just wrote a single word on the whiteboard. Earned. Then turned. Lesson 1, she said. No one spoke. She didn't ask for acknowledgement. She didn't need it. But when she began the drill, no one smirked. No one joked. And no one, not even Spence, stepped onto the mat first. That night, in the locker room, Holt sat alone on the bench by the far wall. Her bag open beside her. The hum of the lights overhead buzzed like memory. She reached into the bottom of the bag and pulled out a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside, a faded patch. Recon. The old chevron. Tattered. Edges fraying. She held it between her fingers for a moment. Then, without ceremony, placed it on the bench beside her and stood. Left it there. And walked away. The patch sat there for over an hour. Forgotten by some. Revered by others. A tech sergeant from Air Logistics passed by, spotted it, and froze. He didn't touch it. Just stood there, cap in hand. The way some men stand in churches or over headstones. Others filtered through. Some noticed it. Some didn't. But word spread, quiet and fast, the way real things do. By the end of the day, the bench had become a kind of altar, unspoken, but unmistakable. Someone left a folded bandage there. Another, a single Ranger tab. No explanation. No notes. Just tokens. Quiet acknowledgements. 3 days later, at a base-wide readiness review, Holt was summoned. Colonel Grant had included her in the tactical response planning team, a spot usually reserved for active command personnel. It turned heads. She entered the operations room wearing civilian clothes and a plain black watch. The table was full of officers, young, decorated, eager. She took the seat at the far end. Said nothing. Just listened. When a major began a presentation on urban contact probability modeling, he paused mid-slide to clarify a hypothetical engagement timeline. Say our convoy takes contact at an underpass, he said, clicking through diagrams. Civilian entanglements, overlapping fields of fire. We pull back? Holt looked up. One movement. No hesitation. No, she said. The room stilled. Not if there's wounded, she added. You go forward. The major blinked. With compromised cover? With compromised time, she replied. If you wait, they bleed out. You go in while there's still noise. It keeps the math from locking. Grant didn't interrupt. He just watched. Holt leaned back. Every minute you hesitate costs you. In noise. In fire. In lives. No tactic changes that. She didn't offer more. Just that. The kind of voice that didn't speak theory, but aftermath. Afterward, one of the lieutenants approached her near the coffee urn. You said, noise locking the math, he asked. What did you mean? She glanced up. When you're in the field long enough, you learn to hear it. The difference between distraction and chaos. Between panic and death. She poured herself half a cup. Noise is the last language the dying speak. He swallowed. Were you, in intelligence? She looked at him, steady, unreadable. No, she said. I was in rescue. Then she walked away. Later that week, a package arrived at the Annex 4 front desk. Unmarked. Hand-delivered. The clerk handed it to Holt without comment. Inside, an old photograph. A field hospital. Canvas tents. Dust in the air. A young woman barely visible behind a stretcher, blood on her hands, goggles around her neck. The image was grainy. But she remembered. Vargas had taken it. Folded inside the photo, a small note, handwritten. "You came back." "I didn't. But I saw." Below the message, a single initial. V. Her fingers didn't tremble. But she sat down slowly, the photo resting on her knee. She stayed that way for some time. The next morning, the sparring mat was full again. Reed stepped up. Quietly. "No jokes." She nodded him forward. They moved carefully. Respectfully. Not because they were afraid, but because they understood something now. He missed a block. She didn't punish him for it. Just adjusted his stance with a firm hand and 2 quiet words. "Feet square." Later, he asked, voice low, "You ever teach, like in theater?" She shook her head. "You don't teach in combat," she said. "You show. Or you fail." Spence hadn't returned to the mat since the first day. But that afternoon, he appeared at the edge again. Alone. He waited for Holt to finish. When she looked over, he didn't ask for a match. Just motioned toward the bench, the one where the patch still rested. "Was that yours?" he asked. She glanced once. Then looked back at him. "No," she said. He looked confused. "It was left for me," she added. "After I earned it." Spence shifted his weight. Looked down. "I didn't know," he said. She didn't nod. Didn't comfort. "I did," she replied simply. That was the problem. Then she turned back to the mat. That night, Spence returned to the bench. He stood over the patch for a long time. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he sat beside it and removed the chevron from his own sleeve. Left it folded beneath the original. No ceremony. No witnesses. Just silence. The kind that stays. Weeks passed. Spring rolled into heat. Dana Holt remained. Not as a legend. Not as a ghost. Just as presence. A woman who spoke little, demanded nothing, and yet, shifted the weight of every room she entered. She began mentoring outside the mat room. Late nights, early mornings. Always on her terms. Sometimes she read alone in the chow hall. Sometimes she ran the perimeter trail, boots soft against the dust. People began joining. One. Then another. Not out of command. Out of need. In the corner of the Annex 4 lounge, someone had framed the recon patch. No name. No plaque. Just a simple mat with a single inscription, handwritten on white paper. Some marks are not for pride. Some are promises. No one admitted who did it. But no one touched it again. A month later, word came from Division Command, an open call for volunteers to assist with a joint urban training operation involving National Guard, active duty units, and Allied force observers. A test scenario, high stress, multivariable, full field. Few civilians ever got access. Fewer still were requested by name. But Holt's name was on the internal shortlist. Colonel Grant called her into his office. No salute was exchanged. None expected. They stood facing each other like two veterans who didn't need rank to recognize authority. "You're on the roster," he said. "If you want it." She took a long moment to answer. "I'll observe," she replied. "But I won't brief." He nodded. "They'll push for you to lead." "I won't," she said again. "Why not?" She hesitated. Just a second. I'm tired of talking to men who still think silence is weakness. Grant didn't press. He just sat back in his chair and studied her. Then he said, "Observation begins Tuesday." That morning, Holt arrived early. No one else was there yet. She sat on the bleachers of the kill house, an empty structure designed to simulate combat environments. Rooms like traps. Doors like lies. She knew these walls. Knew the echo. Knew the way dust settled when bullets stopped. As the units arrived, teams in crisp gear, instructors barked commands, laughter, the slap of gloves and gear, all of it familiar. All of it loud. Holt remained quiet. She wasn't there to be heard. Just to see. Midway through the first exercise, a new team rotated in. Mixed unit. Young. Too young. Their radio comms lagged. Their angles were wide. They lost control of room 3 in under 20 seconds. A non-lethal gas canister dropped. One of them panicked. The drill was halted. As medics rushed in, Holt stood and stepped into the lane. A few instructors began to protest. Grant raised a hand, let her move. She entered room 3 slowly. Carefully. Where the young soldier knelt coughing into his sleeve. She crouched beside him. "You missed the reverb," she said quietly. He blinked. Ash on his lashes. "Ma'am?" She touched her temple. "The walls are steel-backed. You should have heard your footsteps bounce." He nodded, barely understanding. She looked at his rifle, still slung wrong. "Where'd you train?" "Fort Leonard Wood, ma'am." She pointed to his right boot. "Your laces are looped inside. That's a signal." He looked down, flushed. "My brother tied them. Said it was lucky." She stood. "It's not," she said. "It's a mark. If you enter a room tied like that, they'll shoot you first." She walked out before he could respond. That night, the after-action report was revised. The entry simply read: Observation Note, D. Holt, Room 3. Correction, lacing and sound discipline. Cadet 7 be redirected for remedial assessment. Recommendation, extended mentorship. The following week, she was given a provisional instructor's badge. She didn't wear it. Just slipped it into her bag and said nothing. It was during a Saturday morning rotation, early, before sunrise, that she found the girl. Private Arlen. New. 22, maybe. Standing alone outside the mess tent, holding her tray like it might break. "You're not eating," Holt said, passing her. Arlen stiffened. "Not hungry, ma'am." "Doesn't matter," Holt replied. "We don't skip fuel." Arlen hesitated, then followed. They sat at an empty table. Holt didn't speak again. Just ate. One bite at a time. No rush. Arlen watched. Then she said quietly, "They think I'm not strong enough." Holt chewed. Swallowed. "Are you?" Arlen looked down. "I thought I was." Holt put her fork down. "Let me tell you a secret," she said. "Strong isn't loud. It's not fast. It's not muscle." She leaned in slightly. "Strong is how many times you walk into a room knowing no one wants you there, and doing your job anyway." Arlen blinked, her throat tight. "And if you need to cry," Holt added, "wait until the mission's done. Then cry. But never apologize for it." Arlen nodded once. Holt returned to her food. Nothing more needed saying. A few nights later, Holt found herself alone in the Annex again. The gym was quiet. Shadows long. She set her bag down near the mat. Her wrist wraps hung loose. She didn't tie them. Instead, she stood barefoot on the edge of the vinyl and just breathed. In. Out. Remembering a different room. A different mat. The first burn had been in Kandahar. She'd pulled a boy, 19, from the remains of a Humvee. Held his hand until the medevac. Then walked the perimeter alone after. In the dark. Sand in her mouth. Silence in her throat. The firebrand came from a wire team. Local. Quiet. They hadn't spoken a word. But he'd handed her the iron, and she'd nodded. One line. Not for pride. But for memory. For the ones who didn't walk away. Behind her, the gym door opened. Spence. Again. He stood near the rack, hesitant. "Can I ask something?" he said. She turned. He approached slowly. "That last mark," he said. "You didn't earn it, did you?" She met his eyes. "No," she said. "I kept it." Spence's brows furrowed. "Then why burn it?" She stepped closer. "Because Vargas couldn't." She tapped her wrist, lightly. "This one's not mine. It's his. So I remember." Spence didn't speak. But he didn't step back. "What happened to him?" he asked finally. She looked past him, as if through the walls. "We went in to retrieve a downed translator," she said. "I stayed for cover. Vargas went forward." She swallowed once. Half the village was rigged. She tapped the mark again. "They found pieces." "Not enough." Spence nodded slowly. "Then, that's why you never wear medals." She looked at him. "They don't belong to me," she said. "They belong to ghosts." The next day, Spence didn't show up for sparring. Instead, he left something in the locker room. A note. Folded inside his PT shirt. "To whoever finds this. She doesn't ask for respect. That's how you know she's earned it." It was pinned to the wall the next morning. No one took it down. By month's end, a new name appeared in the base newsletter under Distinguished Service Observers. Holt, D., Civilian Advisory, Tactical Readiness. No photo. No write-up. Just the name. And for those who knew, that was enough. Weeks passed. Camp Aldridge quieted. The training cycle rotated. Faces came and went. But Holt stayed. Not loudly. Not as legend. Just as presence. She started holding morning circuits behind Annex 4. No formal announcement. Just an open gate, 0500, and a row of cones set out in perfect symmetry. The first morning, 2 people showed. One was Arlen. The other was a maintenance tech named Dion, who'd once seen Holt stop a sparring session to reposition a private's hip to prevent injury. They didn't speak. Just followed her movements. The second morning, 5 came. By the end of the month, over 20. No selfies. No videos. Just sweat, silence, and breath. Holt never corrected loudly. Never explained. Just moved. And others learned to move with her. One evening, after a particularly brutal ruck circuit, Arlen approached her. She was out of breath, her hands shaking slightly from the strain. "Can I ask something personal?" she said. Holt, sitting on a concrete curb, nodded once. Arlen hesitated. Then asked, "Do you ever miss it? The war?" "No," Arlen said. "The noise. The certainty." Holt tilted her head. "No one misses war," she said. "They miss the clarity." Arlen looked puzzled. Holt met her gaze. "When you're in it, everything makes sense. Every breath is earned. Every step has weight. You don't doubt what matters. You just act." Arlen nodded slowly. "Then what happens when it ends?" she asked. Holt's voice softened. You spend the rest of your life trying to live like that matters. That night, Holt walked the perimeter alone. Just past the motor pool fence, where the base lights faded into woods, she stopped. Reached into her coat pocket. Pulled out the photograph, the one Vargas had taken. And beneath it, a folded piece of cloth. The recon patch. She stood there for a long time, the breeze whispering through pine. Then she dug a small hole with her boot heel. Set the patch inside. Folded the photo atop it. And covered it again with earth. She didn't mark the spot. Didn't say anything. Just stood a moment longer. Then walked back into the light. In the weeks that followed, something began to shift. When Holt entered a room, people straightened. When she crossed the drill fields, instructors lowered their voices. Even officers paused, not out of obligation, but awareness. The kind that says, "Here walks someone who understands more than she speaks." One afternoon, Colonel Grant called her into his office again. This time he wasn't behind his desk. He was standing near the window, looking out over the South Range. "Got a call from Central Command," he said. "They're compiling operational history. Trying to piece together lost field data." Holt said nothing. Grant turned to face her. "They asked if I knew anything about the burned ones." Holt raised a brow. "That's what they called them," Grant said. "Operators without records. No ribbons. No logs. Just scars. Choices made off paper." He folded his arms. "They think you might be one." Holt shrugged slightly. "Does it matter?" Grant smiled faintly. "To me? No." He stepped closer. "But I told them something. Told them you don't operate anymore. You observe. You correct. You restore." He nodded toward the training yard. "And from where I stand, that's more dangerous than half the units they've got on paper." Holt met his eyes. No reaction. Then, softly, "Tell them I'm not interested." Grant nodded. "But if they ask why, what should I say?" She paused. Then replied. "Because I didn't come back to be remembered. I came back to make sure the forgetting stops." The next day, the bench inside Annex 4, where the recon patch had once lain, was empty again. Except for a small, square card. Plain. No embellishment. Written in tight, inked handwriting. "The loudest silence is the one that teaches." No one knew who left it. But no one moved it. On a Thursday afternoon, Arlen returned from her first field assessment. Her face was dust-streaked. Her uniform torn at the knee. But her eyes burned clear. Holt saw her from across the gym and gave a short nod. Arlen crossed to her. Stood tall. "I didn't freeze," she said. "I know. I remembered to move on the count, not the noise." Holt looked at her. "That's how you survive." Arlen smiled, exhausted but proud. Then added, "We found the hostage. I stayed in the room until evac." Holt didn't smile. But her eyes did. She reached forward, tapped Arlen's sleeve. "You're not ready yet," she said. Arlen blinked. "But you're closer than most who ever tried." By early spring, Holt's class was unofficially called the Silent School. No roster. No announcements. Just word of mouth. If you wanted to learn how to endure, without noise, without ego, you came. If you wanted applause, you didn't. One day, a command representative visited Camp Aldridge. Tall. Polished. Sunglasses that reflected more than they saw. He found Grant near the shooting range. "I'm here to see Ms. Holt," he said. Grant didn't move. "She's training. It's a short meeting." Grant shook his head. No such thing with her. Then can you pass this along? The man handed over a sealed folder. Grant didn't take it. She won't open it. The rep stiffened. She's not under orders. That's the point. The rep frowned. Then who does she answer to? Grant smiled. Only the ones who can't speak anymore. The rep didn't understand. But he left. That evening, Holt sat on the edge of the mat again. Alone. She held nothing. Said nothing. But stayed long after the lights dimmed. The janitor passed through once, mop in hand. Didn't interrupt. He'd learned too. Outside, the wind carried faint traces of pine and dust. Holt stood. Stretched once. Then walked the line of the gym floor, her boots soft, her step steady. Each echo folding into the quiet. Not ending it. But deepening it. 3 months passed. Camp Aldridge turned another season. Most personnel moved on. Deployments changed. Faces rotated. But Holt remained, her presence as fixed as the flag outside the mess hall, the one that didn't flutter unless the wind came hard. She still trained. Still observed. But something else had begun. People talked about her less. Not from boredom. From reverence. As if speaking her name too casually risked disrespect. It wasn't myth. It was weight. One humid morning, an unfamiliar figure arrived at Annex 4. Civilian clothes. Limping slightly. He stood near the check-in desk, scanning the roster board. Dana Holt saw him from across the gym. She recognized the gait. The tension in the shoulders. The quiet. She crossed the floor and stopped a few feet away. "Ferguson," she said. He looked up. His hair was thinner now. Scars a bit deeper. But his eyes were still alert. "Didn't expect to find you here," he said. "You shouldn't have." He gave a small smile. "Didn't come for you." She waited. "I came for the one who left that mark," he said, nodding to her wrist. "The wide one." She didn't speak. He stepped closer. Slower now. "I served with Vargas," he said. "I know. I carried him back. What was left?" She looked at him then, fully. No blame. No pity. Just recognition. "I thought no one else marked him," she said. "They didn't," he replied. "Not publicly." A pause. "But I remembered what you said. After the blast. You said, we don't bury them. We carry them." She nodded once. "I tried," he said, voice thinner now. "But I dropped him." "You picked him up," she said. "That's what counts." Ferguson looked away. His hands shook slightly. "I can't wear the patch," he whispered. "I wasn't there at the end." "You were," she said. "You came back." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a single coin, military grade, unit insignia pressed deep into the metal. He held it between his fingers. "I brought this for him," he said. She took it gently. Turned it once. Then slipped it into her pocket. Neither said thank you. Neither needed to. Later that evening, she walked alone to the perimeter again. Back to where she'd buried the patch. She knelt in the soft dust and placed the coin beside the folded earth. No words. Just silence. It rained that night. The heavy kind. Cleansing and wild. By morning, the camp was soaked, paths slick with red clay. But Holt was already training again. Her shirt clung to her back. Her hands gripped the rope lines with practiced precision. Near the weight racks, Reed watched her with the quiet attention of someone studying scripture. Arlen joined him. she ever stop?" Arlen asked. Reed shook his head. "She's not trying to get stronger," he said. "She's trying not to forget." That weekend, during an open base event, civilians were allowed into Camp Aldridge. Families, retired vets, a few local press reps. Holt kept to the sidelines. She didn't pose. Didn't greet. But near the end of the day, a young boy, maybe 10, approached her. Thin. Freckled. Wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big. "Are you the one with the marks?" he asked. She paused. Then knelt. "Who told you that?" "My uncle. He said you earned them." She nodded once. "I don't have marks," he said. She looked at him. "Not yet. Do they hurt?" She considered this. "They did," she said. "But not for long." He studied her face. Then reached out and touched her wrist. "Not the scars. Just the space between them." "Did you ever get scared?" he whispered. She looked at him gently. "I stayed scared," she said. "But I moved anyway." He nodded. Then ran back toward the tents. A photo surfaced later. Someone had taken it, unposed. Holt kneeling before the boy, head slightly bowed, rain still in her hair. The image never made it into publications. But someone printed it and pinned it to the bulletin board outside the gym. No caption. Just the image. And below it, handwritten in pencil. "Bravery is not loud." That night, Holt sat alone on the steps of the barracks. She lit no cigarette. Drank no coffee. Just stared out into the dim blur of the motor pool, where the lights buzzed and the world never quite slept. Colonel Grant joined her. Sat a few feet away. Said nothing. They watched a transport truck back into the lot. Tires hissing on wet gravel. "I put in a request," he said finally. "For your record to be reopened. For the missions to be acknowledged." She didn't look over. "Why?" "Because people need to know." She shook her head once. "They won't understand." "Does that matter?" She turned to him. "Would you do it?" she asked. "If no one ever knew?" Grant didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "But that's not the point." He stood. Looked down at her. "The point is you did." The next morning, a package was waiting at the front desk. No return label. Inside, a folded letter. Written in the precise, slanted hand of military dispatch. It was from the Department of Records. Short. Bureaucratic. This letter acknowledges the existence of unofficial operations conducted between 2004 to 2009 under Directive 47A. The following personnel remain unlisted due to classified parameters. However, exceptional service has been noted and preserved in restricted logs. At the bottom, a list of 3 names. 1 redacted. 1 marked as deceased. 1 D. Holt. Attached to the letter was a pin. Simple. Black. No insignia. Just a single word. Witness. Holt held it for a long time. Then left it on the desk. That evening, she returned to the buried patch. Dug gently. Removed the coin. Set the pin beside it. Then buried them both again. She stood in the dusk, breath steady. Behind her, a figure stepped out from the tree line. Ferguson. He didn't speak. He just stood beside her, eyes closed. After a while, he asked, "What now?" She looked toward the horizon. "Now we make sure no one else gets erased." The following morning, Holt arrived early. The mats were still cool to the touch. The air inside Annex 4 held the quiet before routine. She unlocked the side cabinet, pulled out a clipboard, and placed it on the front desk without fanfare. At the top, the title read, Advanced Field Resilience, Silent Leadership Course. Instructor, D. Holt, Civilian Advisory. No signature. No seal. But when the first class entered, they stood straighter. Quieter. Not because they were afraid, but because they'd come to listen. Really listen. Arlen was the first to speak during that session. Only once. She recited, without prompting. Some scars are carried where no one sees them. But that doesn't mean they aren't earned. Holt nodded. Truth isn't what people say about you, she replied. It's what you keep doing when no one's looking. At week's end, Spence returned to the mat. He trained hard, with focus. But afterward, he approached her one last time. I've been reassigned, he said. Holt nodded. I wanted to say, he hesitated. Then finished, I was wrong. She met his eyes. You weren't alone. That was all she said. It was enough. Camp Aldridge didn't change overnight. But those who stayed changed how they watched. How they listened. A culture of bravado slowly softened into something more durable, respect grounded in humility. Leadership born not from authority, but from endurance. And somewhere in the back corner of the gym, where the patch once lay, someone had etched into the wall, small and almost invisible. Strength speaks in silence. Dana Holt never returned to command. Never gave speeches. Never asked to be remembered. But she stayed. She trained. She watched. And when someone new walked through the glass doors of Annex 4, carrying too much weight and too little voice, she was already waiting. Because some warriors don't return for medals. They return for silence. For the ones who didn't. And in the quiet, they remind us. Dignity needs no permission. It just needs to be seen.